Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents. With me, your host Valerie, and sometime kitty co-hosts Miss Purrington and Mookie are safely at home. We are recording from the Fallout Theater podcast studio. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, show reviews, our advice column, our listing of festivals from across the country and the world, our FPIA contest page, and my articles for the Austin Chronicle and thebarbedwire.com about Austin and Texas comedy. Our most popular feature is our events page for live comedy shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW, where 100% of the entries you see come from comics and producers. Click the Submit a Show button from the top of the homepage or events page to fill out the survey to get your show listed. It's free and easy. Tag us on your Instagram stories and we'll share your show promo to our followers. We also offer paid promo pushes on Instagram. Speaking of events, come check out our monthly Canyon Grill comedy show in Lakeway on first Wednesdays of the month. Want to support these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Click the Support CW icon on our homepage to see the ways that you can help us. Our podcast was launched in 2016 to bring you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, we are talking to somebody who is originally from Virginia and is now based here in Austin. He's a mysterious blend. I don't know that he's going to like this description, but I'm going for it. Blend of Adam Driver, the Nickelback singer, all packaged in one hilarious comic. Okay, all right. I got a subtle nod. He's toured the Southeast in 2024. He's been on Kill Tony. He's got a couple of podcasts, Stony Baloney and This Is Not a Scott Cast. And he is the co-producer of Dress to Kill Comedy. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Scott Wharton.
Hi. Valerie. You really did your research.
Yes,
do you have my mom's maiden name on there too?
I do not.
Nobody's brought up This Is Not a Scott Cast in years. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I scour.
I see that. I feel seen. I feel seen and I feel heard. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before we were recording, I've seen you once perform, and I don't remember exactly when, but I picked your name out of somebody who I have not seen on the Moontower from the Austin comics for before. So I'm like, oh, this is like a magical moment, like the pre-Moontower, the first Moontower. It's like your first Christmas. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a pretty big accomplishment in a comedian's career.
It's huge.
I'm very, very proud to have gotten it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to get to Moontower eventually, but this is very much a meandering conversation.
It's fine.
And I like to kick things off with an official icebreaker question, which is one word to describe your past.
One word to describe my past: troublesome.
Man, I like when people just don't even skip a beat and they've got something that already paints a story.
I mean, it came instantly. One word to describe my past: troublesome.
Would you like to explain yourself?
I mean, I was always a little rascal as a kid, I guess, always finding my way into trouble and purposefully getting myself suspended from school and stuff like that so I didn't have to go. And, I've been in and out of trouble with the law and girlfriends and landlords and, everyone in between. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. And you grew up in Virginia?
Yeah, I grew up in Virginia, Fredericksburg. It's about an hour north of Richmond, hour south of D.C., right off I-95.
Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know Virginia at all.
Where are you from?
Well, that's a long story.
That's a convoluted question or convoluted answer.
Yeah, born in Belgium, but raised after I was 7 when we moved here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then pretty much Texas ever since.
Pretty much Texas, yeah.
Okay.
I've spent some time working in Cincinnati and Chicago, but I've been back in Texas for over 15 years now.
Okay.
So I definitely consider myself a lifelong Texan.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I've been here since 2021,
okay.
July 2021.
All right.
I love it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess for where you were at in Virginia, was far enough away from the metropolis of the DC and that culture,
Right.
that vacuum of
Right. So just
mayhem.
outside of where like the metro runs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of small town, or
It's a commuter town.
okay.
I wouldn't call it a small town.
Yeah.
It is pretty well populated and it's growing day by day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a medium sized suburb
Yeah.
outside of DC. It's like right on the edge of the suburbs and the country.
Okay.
So I grew up with people and they talk like this. And I'm like, we went to the same high school, buddy. We went to the same high school, brother.
That's great. What role did comedy play in your life growing up?
What role did comedy play in my life growing up? I mean, my family is all jokesters. You know what I mean? Everybody's kind of very blue-collar family, blue-collar background, and everybody that seemed that was their way of cutting loose and kind of forgetting about the worries and the troubles of life. And, you know, some of our upbringings and situations is just, you know, cutting up, talking shit, joking and laughing with everybody. And then as far as like stand-up comedy goes, I really discovered that at a young age. I had a TV in my room, and I had Comedy Central.
Oh,
so
you're rich.
yeah, exactly. So at probably 9 years old, I was watching Dane Cook and Mark Maron and Joe DeRosa and people like that. Their little 30-minute specials on Comedy Central, way before I was old enough to be, you know, watching that sort of thing.
Yeah, and probably not able to absorb some of the stuff that they were talking about.
Exactly.
either.
Yeah, a lot of references lost on me for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I fell in love with it then. I've loved comedy since I was a kid. The first comedy DVD I ever bought was the original Kings of Comedy from this little pawn shop up at the shopping center where I grew up. And then, yeah, it just grew from there. Original Kings to Cat Williams to Eddie Murphy, Delirious, and then, you know, Chappelle. Yeah. Yeah.
And did you at any point think, oh, this is something that I could do, and when you were younger?
When I was younger, I mean, I don't think it's something I was ever like consciously thinking of. Like, I want to grow up and be a stand-up comedian. I wanted to grow up and be a wrestler or
Really?
yeah, or like
God.
Monday Night Football commentator.
Oh, wow.
So it was always like spotlight that was like, yeah, I was never like, I want to grow up and be a fireman. You know, I always wanted to be somebody who was in entertainment on TV, I guess, talking to people. And then, yeah, comedy just kind of, at some point in my life, I decided that I wanted to do comedy. I don't really remember when it was. It was probably in my teens, and it wasn't for years until I actually was able to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Did you, well, let's see, how do I want to ask the sequence of questions? So you were in Virginia your entire life?
For 30
until,
years
okay.
until I moved to
All right.
Austin. Same
All right.
hometown. I went to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Wow, lifer. So what finally did push you to start comedy, and where do you start comedy in that area?
What really pushed me to start doing comedy and start writing comedy and really truly considering it was a string of mushroom trips. I was actually selling mushrooms at the time, and like every other night I would eat an eighth and I would listen to like Robin Williams radio or something like that on Pandora. And it was just kind of, it was, you know, Pandora is very like shuffled. It would play a track off somebody's album and it'd be one joke and then it'd go from Robin Williams to Richard Pryor to, you know, whoever. And it was during that time that I really fell in love with comedy and started like strongly considering it, started writing and started calling myself an aspiring comedian and talking to people about this is something I want to do. It wasn't until a couple of years later.
How old were you, by the way?
How old was I then? I was probably about 23 or 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you doing? Like you finished high school. What were you like? What were you stuck doing? As a
I
professional?
dropped out of high school as a youngster to work to help feed my family and put clothes on my back. I come from a very poor background. So I grew up doing tree work, like running chainsaws and stuff like that. So yeah, I was mainly doing that, selling drugs. And then, like I said, I fell in love with comedy.
A man of earth, man of the earth in many ways.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's really weird being like a mushroom enthusiast, and then the next day you have to go run a chainsaw and cut trees down. You really feel bad about what you're doing. Like, they're very conflicting concepts, right? It's kind of the opposite of a tree hugger. But I didn't have a car growing up for a long time until I was in my late 20s. And so, when I wanted to do comedy, getting up to DC or getting down to Richmond to do shows wasn't really like a viable option. I really have, the resources to do that. Mm-hmm. And being a drug dealer, you're kind of on call all the time, sitting at home all day waiting for somebody to hit you up. So it wasn't until a couple years later when I was 27, it was March 2018, they started putting on comedy show at a bar, like an open mic, at a bar near where I lived. Okay. Like it was walking distance from where I lived. I could get drunk and stumble home if I had to. I could crawl home if I had to. And I went there and watched a couple open mics, and I was friends with the DJ, and then he was friends with the guy who was running the mic, and then it said aspiring comedian on my Facebook, and my buddy, the DJ, Tony B, he pushed me to do it. He was like, come down to the open mics, and I think I went down there and watched like 3, and had been writing in between, and then the 4th time that I came, Keezer, who was running the mic, came up and was like, come do 5 minutes. And I was like, all right, I finally did it. And I did it, and I didn't do bad. I thought I did pretty well for my first time. I got some laughs, and I left that night with a high that I could never match. That I'm still constantly trying to chase. As a comedian, it's a high. It's a drug, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of became my new high.
Yeah.
I actually quit doing cocaine a couple months after I started doing comedy, and I was clean for a couple years up until I moved to Austin. Oh. Yeah. And then a couple months in Austin, it don't take long, You have a few drinks, you're working at Vulcan, next thing you know, the sound guy's like, hey, you wanna stay up till 4 a.m? You wanna watch the sun come up, bud?
So was this a comedy open mic that you attended, or was it like a
No, it was a stand-up open mic. Wow, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you describe the writing that you were doing as far as the style of comedy? Because at this point you must have watched millions of specials, and you've gotten a flavor for all the various types of comedy that people perform. So what was Scott's voice in those?
Everything came out very long-winded at first, and then I started. Everything came out very long-winded at first, like observational, long-winded, just, has your girlfriend ever done this type thing? Or, have you ever lived in a motel? Or, I'm tall, whatever the thing was.
Yeah, the easy stuff.
But yeah, it was all very, very long-winded, and it took me a little while to kind of hone that in, and I started writing more like one-liners, one-liner tag, one-liner tag, one-liner tag. But now as time's gone on, I'm trying to do 3 and 4 and 5 minute long bits now. Mm-hmm. But it was like, then that was easier for me to do, right? It was like easier for me to grasp. So yeah, it was much shorter, much more, much more one-linery, kind of. And but the things I wanted to talk about, like I love Bill Hicks, right? I love comics like that. Bill Hicks, Doug Stanhope. So it was like Bill Hicks was telling Mitch Hedberg style jokes. Okay. So I was talking about these, I can't remember some of the things I was talking, but, talking about conspiracy theories and the government, but doing it in a very, like, quick way. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's how it first started bubbling up and coming out. And then Keezer, who was running the open mics, had been doing comedy for a little while. I started going over to his house, and he kind of helped teach me how to write a little bit. We would go in and do like a writing exercise where we'd write down like 3 words or 3 topics, and then we'd spend 10 minutes writing jokes on those topics, right? That was just like kind of getting loose. Yeah. And then we would go look at, okay, this is the joke that I'm actually trying to work on, right? And he started kind of teaching me like just some of the mechanics of like writing a joke, right? Because I mean, you watch people perform, but I never was really able to dissect how they were making that happen, how they were coming to these conclusions. After I started doing comedy, writing comedy, now I can hardly watch and enjoy a special because I'm too busy dissecting, like, how did they get to that point? Yeah. Oh, I see how he did that, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you're able to kind of get some practice in this venue that you can stumble home to.
Yeah.
And how often are you? Is this once a week?
Weekly, yeah,
Okay.
it was weekly
That's
at
a
this point.
pretty good pace to start out with.
Yeah, in the beginning, yeah.
And then so it's interesting. You stopped doing cocaine.
Well, I realized I was living in a motel at this point with a buddy of mine, and I was, abusing drugs, and I just came to the realization, like, hey, if you don't stop doing this, you're never going to be able to get to the level that you want to be doing stand-up comedy. You'll never get out of this roach motel. You're going to live and die here like all these other people that have been living here for, half a decade and stuff. So it just kind of, hit me in a flash. I just kind of had an epiphany and realized that this is going to get in the way of what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to choose.
Yeah. That's very lucky that you reached that conclusion without having to hit a rock bottom to come to that conclusion that maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
yeah not at the level that I was doing it. But hey, look, other people have levels of control that I don't have when it comes to that, right? I see comics out in town who can casually do coke and not be spun out and up for days at a time. But for me, I'm an addict, and once I do one line, we're doing it until I run out of money, basically. Yeah.
Wow. And that is not a culture that I necessarily understand. Mm-hmm. And as a mother, I have deep concerns.
Sure, yeah.
About that part of our comedy culture. Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of the people that I end up talking to are people that are kind of on the other side, where they've realized, I have to be sober, and I have to be 100% sober. And the mother in me gets very excited about that.
Right, yeah. You're like, gosh, if he can, my kids can too, right?
Well, knock on wood, my kid, is not going to go down that path, either the comedy path or the drug path.
Right. Hopefully they find a nice job as anything else. Literally anything else.
Literally, yeah.
But it's very much a party culture. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We're at bars and clubs 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much a party culture. And then it's a drinking culture, and cocaine comes with that, Sometimes you have too much booze and you got to straighten yourself back out.
Yeah.
And that's how people do it with a line.
I just don't understand it, Scott.
Hey, that's good. That's a good thing. You shouldn't. I'm glad you don't have a curiosity to understand it, because that's where things start going sideways.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make that decision for yourself, and did you feel differently about comedy from that point forward? Because you already made that bargain that I got to cut this out if I'm going to pursue the comedy. But then once you stop doing cocaine, now what happens with the comedy?
It becomes more important. I get obsessed.
Yeah.
I get very obsessive with it, where I can't sleep at night, but for a different reason, because I've been writing for the past 2 hours, and as soon as I close my eyes, my brain's like, what if you said this? And I'm like, all right, I got to roll over and I'm going to write that down. Okay, turn the light off and lay back down. What if you said this? Oh, you're right, I got to write that down. And now I'm up for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just laying down, writing, laying down, writing, laying down, writing, right? So it was really just like a transmutation of one addiction to another, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And at what point are you starting to think, I gotta perform at more than this open mic every week?
Right. So that open mic was the only thing going on. They started doing roast battles there, which was like tournament style. So there would be, 8 or 10 comics that showed up, and we would all sign up, and you'd have to have written jokes for everybody there that night, because you're going to go head to head against somebody, and then it's a bracket. You go against the next person. So you do 3 or 4 battles a night. I think that's kind of what helped me to start writing more like one-liners and shorter jokes, because I learned how to write roast jokes, and I then learned how to apply like that technique to writing jokes about other things, right? If I can write a roast about a person, I can write a roast about a situation, or a current event, or a place, right? What was the question? So Keezer got Comedy Zone, which is like an East Coast comedy club chain, they opened up a room in my hometown, and that became something I would do periodically. I would go there and hang out and just stack chairs and run tickets and do whatever little thing it was that I could to keep my foot in the door. And I got to do hosting spots there. And as time went on, things started opening up more in town. Comedy became more fruitful. And we started doing another open mic at a different place, and another open mic at another place. So we had 3 going on.
Okay.
And then I got wheels, right? At some point in this, I was able to get wheels. And then, I was driving up to Northern Virginia. I was driving up to DC. I was driving, down to Richmond and stuff like that, and hitting more mics, getting around other comics other than just the 12 in that, little town where I was, right? You go down to Richmond and now you're around 20 and 30 and 50 people. You go up to DC, there's, 80 comics up there, right? So yeah, you start learning from those people in those scenes that were people like me that lived in a small town or lived in Charlottesville or whatever, that had limited opportunities, and then they went somewhere where there was more opportunity, and then you're able to kind of like watch them and figure out how they're doing things and pick their brains a little bit. You know what I mean?
What was the span of time between that first open mic and you getting wheels and kind of your world expanding?
Let's see, 2018. So really about a year and a half, I think. I was very limited for a little while. My buddy Pete and I, we would ride down to Richmond together. I would ride with him, or I would ride up to the DC area with him. But then, I think it was sometime in 2019 is when I got my own wheels. And then I was able to start, getting out myself. I could just ride up to DC myself. I didn't have to depend on anybody, right?
Yeah.
And that's when the doors really open. And that's also when I was doing it in the open mic scene in the smaller town, I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at this as compared to these other 15 people.
Sure.
And then you get up to Richmond and you're like, oh, I'm not as good at this as I thought I was. But then you go do that for longer and you're like, okay, no, I am good at this. I'm learning how to do this here. And then, then the goal starts becoming, oh, well, now I want to go to California. I want to be a regular at the Comedy Store, right? That was the goal.
But not New York?
No,
It's
New
right up
York
the
was
coast.
so close to home. It felt like it was an easy out, right? It felt like it would be
Interesting.
easy for me to give up and just come back home, right?
Okay.
I felt like I needed LA to give myself that cushion, right?
Yeah.
To like give myself that space. Otherwise, if things went wrong, it wasn't as easy to just get back home, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't just take a train, right? Because Amtrak runs, from my hometown up to New York City, right?
Yeah.
Up through Philadelphia, all those places. So I felt like it would have been too easy of an out. I would have been too close to home.
Yeah. And LA just for the Comedy Store. Like you weren't even thinking about the possibilities of writing on shows or, the entertainment industry in general. It was laser focused on.
Right, my
comedy.
brain hadn't even unlocked that yet because, when you first start doing comedy, you're like, oh, I'm going to do comedy. I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to make it, and not realizing that, like, all these people that you love, Carlin and Chappelle and, name a comedian, Bernie Mac, that all of them did more than just stand-up comedy. They were writers on movies, writer on sketch shows, actors in movies and sketch shows, right? So I started realizing that, and then that became a little bit of the goal, right? Like it was, okay, maybe that can happen for me too while I'm out there. But then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, now what do we do? Now what do we all do?
Yeah. And what did you do specifically? Like, because you were on momentum. You were kind of going through that learning curve.
Yeah, I had great momentum. Well, luckily for us in my town, it's a little bit more conservative. It's not like New York or LA, right, where everybody was doing these crazy lockdowns. It was, a couple weeks they had us locked down. We couldn't do anything. And then things slowly started opening back up. It was like, okay, you can operate a restaurant, right? Or, hey, you can do live music, right? But it had all these stipulations around it. So we started doing open mics under those stipulations, but every week the city would hit us with a new, Yeah, you can do mics, but you guys can't share a microphone. Or you can do mics, but it can't be an open mic. It has to be a show. So then I had to like do online signups and make it look like it was an actual lineup and stuff. But yeah, we were running open mics all through COVID. I had people coming down from DC, New York, Denver, people coming up from Virginia Beach and Richmond. They were all coming to Fredericksburg because it was the only open mic in the area to do. Yeah, it was really cool. I got to meet a lot of great people doing that. That's when I met Mumford Davis and some of his comic friends from Richmond, Monty and Tyler. They started coming up regularly. I was hosting the mics at this point. Like I was running everything. Keezer had moved. Brandon, who was like another mentor of mine and was running mics, he also moved back to DC. So like now everything was in my hands. And then I started doing the same thing that they did for me. I started giving those people from Richmond opportunities, you know. These were like very hard-nosed, blue-collar, dirty comedians from Richmond. And like they really couldn't get ahead in that scene down there because it was so very liberal and cancel culture-y. And they wouldn't, you know, you can't joke about that. They were very much like that. And I'm like, come up to Fredericksburg and come tell your Kevin Spacey joke. I don't care, you know. Come up here and make people laugh and work on this and get better. Come host a show. You host. You get some hosting experience and practice. I did that, and then in 2020, Mumford Davis, who lives here now, I don't know if you met Mumford. He works at Sunset. He's very, you know, talented comedian. So Mumford's sister had gifted him 2 plane tickets and a hotel to come down to Austin in like February of 2021.
Okay.
And Mumford was supposed to bring Monty, who's his best friend, and Monty wasn't able to go, so Mumford brought me.
Wow.
And I'm so very grateful for that because we came down here to see like same as before where I was like, I think I'm good at this. Let me go to DC and see. And I was like, oh, I'm not. And then I get better. And now it's like, I think I'm good at this. Let's go to Austin and see. Yeah. And we came out to Austin and I got Kill Tony the first night that we were here.
No way.
Yeah. And, met the owners of Vulcan and they had me in all week. And, we met everybody in town and, when you're a new face somewhere like this, everybody's like, come on, when are you going to come do my show? When are you moving back, right? And Mumford and I did, multiple open mics a night, every night of the week, jumping on people's shows the whole time we were here. And we could hang. We were good enough to hang. People wanted us back. People were like, when are you moving here? I want to book you on my show. Wow. And that's when we were like, oh, we're doing it. We're really doing it. We're comedians. We're real comedians. We're out here in this real big scene and stuff. So yeah, Mumford moved back. That was like February 2021. Mumford moved here in April, and I moved here in July. Okay. And have been just going at it hard ever since. Yeah. I feel like I skipped ahead. I feel like you asked me a story. I was like, what happened in 2019? I'm like, let me tell you about the future. So sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's very compelling, and you are clearly a very good storyteller.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to pause at this point because I think this is a good break point because then we can talk about, what happens July 2021 and on. So this card game, it's Where Should We Begin? It's by this world-famous psychologist and Esther Perel. Okay. And my web guru, Richard, gifted me this, and it's been kind of a fun little game that I play. So you're going to point to one of these 2 cards, and I will read that one to you after you read the other one to me. So point to the one that you want.
Point to the one that I want you to read?
To you, yeah.
Okay. And just you can read this one. I'll read this one.
You will read that
and
one.
I read first?
Yep.
Okay.
Nobody wants to hear me, so we get mine done fast.
Wow. This is a good one.
Oh, boy.
I burned a bridge when I blank.
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh, man. The one that is popping in my head so long ago, I was working in, I had taken my first out-of-state job, and it was in Cincinnati, which is the worst. I hate that city so much.
Sounds cold and dreary
but it has like all of the things that you would think would be charming. It's got the football team.
It's got a river.
And Kentucky's beautiful.
Yeah, you're just north of Louisville, right, in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but God, I couldn't make friends. And I was at an age where it's like, I'm in my 20s and I want to make friends, but I could not. They're very insular. So I was miserable. So I started job hunting to get back to Texas. And I went for an interview in Dallas, and I got the job offer, and I'm like, no. I ended up telling them no, and I burned that bridge, and I've been like terrified of ever like reaching out to that company ever again to work there. Of course, by now, it's been so many years.
Right.
They wouldn't remember that I had burned that bridge.
Yeah, but if you didn't burn that bridge, would you be doing fun stuff like this, talking to all the Austin comics and involved with this scene?
Yeah,
and,
no.
Do you have Moontower badges?
Press. That's
See, there you go. Exactly. Would you have that Moontower press badge? Yeah, exactly.
No, I'd be stuck in Dallas, which
which sounds like a sad country song.
is. Yeah.
Sounds like a Charlie Crockett song. I'm stuck in Dallas.
Yeah. So that's my tale. All right, you ready for yours, Scott?
I think so.
Okay. Ooh, this will be fun. Scott, I'm particularly stubborn about.
What am I stubborn about? Stubborn. Something. My ex-girlfriend. I just can't learn. Stubborn as a mule. I keep coming back no matter what my buddies tell me. What everybody tells me. No matter what she tells me, I keep going back. I'm just outside her window with the boombox, like, say anything. Just stubborn as a mule. I don't know why that's the one that comes to me. But yeah.
You gotta go with the first thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Hi, Lindsay. Shout out. Love you. I hope you're doing well. She's a nice lady, which is why I couldn't stop going back.
Yeah. Okay, so you make the move, and how? I mean, I get the appeal of Austin, and especially at that time in 2021, where Austin was pretty much becoming like a mecca,
right?
For comedy, because LA and New York were just still very strict shut down.
Yeah, Rogan and Tony had just moved here, and they were starting everything up.
Yeah. Was it hard to leave a home that you've had for your entire life?
Yeah.
To chase this dream?
Oh my God, yeah. I left everything that I've knew I lived there for 30 years. I didn't turn 30 until November 2021. But essentially, I lived in Fredericksburg for 30 years.
Yeah.
Everyone and everything I knew, I was leaving all of that.
Yeah.
Leaving all of my comfort zones, leaving all the river, doing LSD with my friends every other weekend. You know what I mean? Like leaving all of those things that I created so many memories around. Yeah, it was very difficult. And also going from being a big fish in a small pond to coming out here to this huge established comedy scene and trying to figure out where you fit in and being a big fish in a big pond where everybody that's here was the big fish in the small pond.
Yeah.
They were the big fish in Madison, Wisconsin, and the big fish in San Diego, and the big fish in Peoria, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? That's Fuzzy and Keith Ray and Miles and all those people, Bianca, Genevieve, Marcus, all those people moved out here. They were all the shit in their hometown. And we all thought we were going to move here and it was going to be gravy train. And I'm going to get booked every night. I'm going to be able to pay my rent doing comedy. I'm going to be doing shows 3 times a night. And after 2 months of not being here, 20 other the hot new things visited Austin in that amount of time or moved to Austin in that amount of time. So by the time I got back, people like Spencer Cavins and Dean Stanfield, people who were like, man, when are you moving back? I'm going to book you on my show. They forgot who the fuck I was. I wasn't the hot new thing anymore, right? So yeah, it was difficult. Now I was very lucky, very blessed because, like I said, when I did Kill Tony, I was able to meet the managers and the ownership, and I became good friends with Ashley, who was the manager of Vulcan at the time. So the whole time between when I visited here and when I moved here, she would periodically hit me up and was like, hey, when are you coming out? Hey, do you need a place to stay? Hey, do you need a job? And was just like sending me resources on that sort of thing. And then finally she was like, hey, we had to fire one of our door guys, you have a job as soon as you get here. And then it was like, all right, well, I got to get my fucking shit together.
Yeah.
You know, I got to get out there so I moved here on the 24th of, is it the 24th or 26th of July 2021. I moved in, I put all my stuff in, I got my dog settled, and then I rode down to Vulcan and met the manager at the time, Cam, and met some other door guys who I didn't know, and went down there and saw what it looked like on a Saturday night. And then I was working my first shift by Monday.
Huh.
So I was here for 2 days, and I had already started working my first shift. I had a job figured out. I had a place to stay. Like, I knew some people, right? I met Connor Nutt and John Wolf and people like that when I visited here. Now I was working with some of those people at Vulcan. Yeah. There was a couple other guys that had just started working at Vulcan like the day before or the day after me. So we kind of became real close, the three of us, because we're the new guys. We got to stick together, you know? It was incredibly difficult going from everything that I'd ever known and all of the easy outs, you know what I mean? Oh, fuck, what am I going to do for work? Oh, I'll call up my Uncle Wayne and I'll go drag limbs and run chainsaw for, $20 an hour, right? So just like leaving all of those comforts and all of those safety blankets, I guess, to come out here, it was incredibly terrifying and intimidating.
Yeah. Was there a point for you when you lost that feeling of the being terrified about the new place and learning everything from scratch about your home?
I don't know if I could pinpoint it, but so I visited home the first Christmas that I was here, right? Christmas 2021, and when I visited home, it was like great, everything's still the same, you know what I mean? All my friends are still here. I was happy to be home, and I was happy, when I got back to Austin. The second time I visited home, I was like, I had been more established in the scene. I was getting shows. I was working constantly. I was around nothing but comedians all the time, which is like just a complete paradigm shift from like normal friends.
Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, my friend group back home, they're some of the funniest people I've ever met. My buddy Andy is one of the funniest people I've ever met. But when you come out here with comics, it's just like a constant riff all the time. It never stops. Mm-hmm. And so the second time I went home, it was in like June of 2022, and everything was still the same. The first time I went home, it was like, oh, everything's still the same. Yeah. And the next time I went home, I was like, oh, everything's still the same.
Yeah.
And the town was just too small for me. And it wasn't like I've gotten too big for this town. It was just like there wasn't enough opportunities there like there is here in Austin. Mm-hmm. And that's really when it hit me. And that's when I flew back here to Austin that time. That is when it was, I'm flying home. Mm. And that when I got back in that airport that time and was walking through the terminals and looking at, the Willie Nelson memorabilia and all the things in the Austin airport that make it Austin-y, I cried because I was like, I'm home. This is home now, And it was kind of bittersweet because it was like, that's not my home anymore. And that kind of breaks my heart, but like, this is my home now. Yeah. And I think that's really when the transition happened. It was like summer 2022 is when I realized this is where I belong. This is what's home. It might be hard and it might, still be hard some days, but like, this is where I need to be. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Wow. Every story that you have shared, like you're an incredible storyteller.
Thank you.
Hopefully other people tell you that all the time too.
I appreciate that.
It's been fascinating listening to you talk. So how do you spend your time from 2022 to today, where you got picked up to do Moontower, which is kind of every Austin comics little dream.
For the first maybe 2 years, I didn't really spend any time off of 6th Street, right? It was just like
you don't need to.
Yeah, the only thing I knew of Austin was this downtown area, right? And then I started discovering things like Barton Springs. And that's when this really cemented that this is home. that's what keeps me here. That's a
Oh.
magic place. I love Barton Springs so
Yeah.
much.
Wow.
And like we have the river at home, I love being a little water bug, but that place is so magic and so special. And you just start discovering other little gems about this town. And then you start realizing like, man, there's never not something to do.
Yeah.
No matter what scene you're in, what your style is, or what night of the week it is, there's something for you to do. There's a karaoke somewhere. There's some interactive craft happening. There's a singles night. There's comedy. There's something to do. There's music, right? I'd never really been to like live music. I've been to one live concert before I moved here. And now, like, my buddy Connor and I are going, I'm a fiend. You can't keep me out of the Moody Center. You can't.
Wow.
I'll go there and see bands I don't even know or like just because I'm like, I want to be around live music. I mean, that's one of the greatest parts about this town is no matter who your favorite band is, they're coming here. And if they don't come here, they're going to San Antonio. Yeah. And that's only an hour down the road. But outside of comedy, that's a lot of what I do. A lot of going to live music shows, enjoying all the parks we have around town. I have 2 dogs, so I'm able to like take them out, let them off leash. It's a very dog friendly town. Going down to Barton Springs. That's where a lot of my time is spent when I'm not doing comedy. Yeah.
And have you, since you were hosting and producing the open mic back at your old home, did you get into producing and running your own shows here?
Not immediately. Now, that was something that I knew I was supposed to do. I had some mentors, Brian Kearns, Alex Moore. They're old Comedy Store comedians that are from Virginia and that I know through some mutual friends of mine. And, they mentored me a lot. And one thing that Brian told me is, you need to produce your own show. You need to produce your own show, run your own open mic, and kind of trade stage time with people, right? And I never really did that. I was working so much at Vulcan. You're working nights all the time, right? And whatever nights I was off, I was like trying to run around and do other stuff. So it wasn't until 2022 when my friend Connor Nutt came to me with this idea for a show called Dressed to Kill. Where, all the comedians dress up in suits and the audience is encouraged to as well. Cocktail attire, an homage to the Lenny Bruce era of comedy. When he brought this idea to me, I had all the experience of running open mics, producing shows and stuff like that in Virginia. And I'd done so successfully. I mean, my open mics were like shows. We had a really good time. We had really good audiences. You wouldn't know it was an open mic. And I was able to take a lot of that knowledge and those tools and apply that to Dress to Kill. Once he came to me with this idea, I was like, all right, well, you need to do this, that, and the other. And I started helping him set up some of that stuff. And we did the first show at, what is it called? The In Cahoots, right? Right over on East 7th. They only do music there now.
Okay.
But so we did the first show over there, and after the show was done, Connor and I were talking about it and about like what needs to be done to make things better. And then he started talking about the lineup, and he's like, here's what I'm thinking for the next lineup. He's like, all right, definitely, like, of course you, and then we're going to put on da-da-da and da-da-da. And I stopped him, and I was like, hey, man, like, I know, like, we're buddies, we're best friends, but, like, don't feel like you have to book me on every show. And he was like, no, actually, I was going to talk to you about this. I was going to ask you if you wanted to come be the co-producer of Dress to Kill. Because of all of everything that you've done to help make this great. And then once that kind of became official, then it was like, all right, well, let's set up the email and let's set up the Instagram and the Facebook, and we'll get a logo built and we'll do all these things. And we started kind of building a game plan of how we wanted Dress to Kill to look, and like what our future goals were for it. And so, luckily Connor brought me on to help him produce Dress to Kill. It's his brainchild. It's his idea. But ever since that first night, he brought me on to be the co-producer of the show, and it's been a wild ride ever since. It's been great. I mean, we've been able to done a lot of spectacular. That's why I'm on Moontower. So we did Dress to Kill at Cap City. They saw it. They loved it. They loved Connor and I, and they were like, will you guys come do Moontower? Will you bring your show on Moontower?
Oh, so you're also doing Dress to Kill it? Oh, see, I didn't even look at like the like special show things.
Yeah, it's like goddamn Comedy Jam and Stand Up on the Spot and Dress to Kill comedy. I was like, how cool is
dude,
that? Yeah.
That's amazing.
my name's on a flyer with Joey Diaz. Like, how neat is that? That's so fucking cool. Like, that's amazing.
Right. And you mentioned Adam Ray.
Adam Ray.
And you're sharing,
exactly,
the flyer with him.
And the Dr. Phil show is a couple. If you go look at the Comedy Wham website and look at the list of comics, I'm right next to the Sklar brothers. I'm like, it's so weird. I remember growing up watching them. I remember watching their stand-up as a teenager and in high school and stuff. I'm like, now I'm going to be bumping shoulders with them with my artist badge, at the after parties and stuff. I was like, wow, how neat is this? It's still very surreal. It still hits me sometimes. It's like, oh, shit, I'm doing this, It's very cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is.
But, was able to find success with Dress to Kill. I mean, we've taken that all over the state, all over the country. We've done Comedy Works in Denver, and we've done Zanies in Chicago, and we're doing the Punchline in Houston. So we've got to do some really prominent clubs, work with some great people, really get to see, work with Cap City. So when you're working with clubs like that, you get to see like their level of professionalism and how a club and how our production should be ran. Yeah. And you get to kind of apply that knowledge going forward. It helps teach you who to and who not to work with.
Yeah.
But
that was one of my thoughts, is by working at the Vulcan, you were learning like by watching as well. Mm-hmm. So that was invaluable.
Yeah, you have, Lucas McCrary was running Hit List and Main Course. Him and Dan Pietetsky are running these shows there. Yeah. It seems like weekly, right? I think it was weekly, not monthly.
Like all the time.
It was all the time. And I mean, constant sellouts.
Yeah.
That's other than Rogan, Kill Tony, Secret Show, or like Duncan Trussell, the only people I've ever seen sell out bottom and top floor of Vulcan is Lucas McCrary. Huh. And it was like watching those guys and kind of figuring out what they were doing and kind of, because they're not going to tell you all their tricks, right? I'm not going to teach you all how I do this, but you get to pick their brains a little bit. Mm-hmm. We had Derek and Derek Poston and Asana Ahmad were running Solid Show there. And they really taught us how to treat the staff when we're producing a show, because of the way that they treated us, because they're old Comedy Store guys, you know what I mean? They kind of know how things are supposed to go, and that helped teach us too. But was able to gain that success with Dress to Kill, and then my buddy Gabe and I, a different friend who I do a podcast with, the Stony Baloney, we started producing a live show, just a live showcase. But it was because of the success that I had with Dress to Kill that I was able to have a little bit of a resume and come to a venue and go, hey, this is what I've done. This is what I want to do here. Do you guys have an opening for that? So now I run 2 successful shows.
What is the other show? I don't think I know the other show.
Stony Baloney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was
It is a podcast, but we also run a live showcase just under that moniker, under that branding, essentially. Right. The idea is for Stony Baloney to be like a production company, kind of like Broken Lizard or Monty Python's Flying Circus, something like that, right?
That's a good
name.
I like that name.
Yeah. What, Stony Baloney?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. It's, when Gabe, and once again, Gabe's brainchild, I'm just lucky enough to have good friends who believe in me, want to hitch their wagon to mine, and he brought this idea to me, and I was like, that's genius. Let's get a logo made. How fast can we get a logo made? When can we start recording? So now him and I produced one at the Green Room. We're about to start producing one in Dallas. Connor and I are going to be producing a secondary show in Dallas as well. So I went from producing no shows to co-producing, 6 a month on a regular basis, right? So it's really exciting. It's very fun. Yeah, it's very fun. And it's like, sometimes you go out on Saturday night at Creek and you see Heather Keith or Dylan Carlino sitting out back on the back patio, and you're like, damn, you're not booked? Okay, I don't feel as bad about not being booked now, because it's like, fuck, I like to be doing comedy 4 or 5 times a week. I'm not getting booked on meaningful shows. But when you create your own opportunities, well, now there's all the meaningful shows you need. Exactly. You got plenty of practice now.
Right.
Go hit your little rinky-dink open mics to go do your shows that count and that, really matter. And just keep doing that. And then when Moontower comes along, I'll be ready. I'll have done wax on, wax off enough that it'll just come out of me and fly out of me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited for you.
I'm so excited too. Yeah, you should have Connor on as well. He's also first time on Moontower, and he's native Texan. He went to school in San Marcos. He lived in Austin before the pandemic. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know I've seen him several times, and I don't know why we've never had a conversation.
Connor's the sweetest.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to have him and Gabe in my life.
Yeah.
They're two people who like have their shit together, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't. It's very nice to have like friends that you get to work with, and we kind of balance each other in that way, and you know, contrast each other in that way, because you know, my head's very in the clouds sometimes, and I have very lofty goals, and it's like that's great to work towards that and towards the future. But Connor's very grounded. He's like, okay, yes, but what can we do right now? How do we promote for the next show, Scott? You know,
it's so great when there's a good partnership that we're balancing happening.
But now he comes to me sometimes and he's like, man, I want to get this, or I want to do that. Like, I want us to be able to do this or that. And, you know, and then I'm the one like, okay, yeah, me too. But how do we promote the next show? Right. So we've like kind of got a yin and yang going on now, where we both find each other mimicking each other's personalities a little bit, and our goals for Dress to Kill.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Anything we haven't talked about that I want to talk about? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. This has been a great free-flowing conversation. I feel like I've got most of my comedy story out. Yeah, I mean, just really, I'm really lucky to have been in some of the positions I was, to be able to get that job working at Vulcan my second day in town. Like, that was a huge blessing. Now I'm working with, you know, face-to-face constantly on a weekly basis with Tony Hinchcliffe, Brian Redband, Joe Rogan. You know, these
are you at the Mothership now?
No, I'm not at Mothership
okay.
now. But when I was at Vulcan,
they
were, you know,
they were always,
Kill Tony Monday,
there.
Rogan Tuesday, Wednesday, Secret Show Thursday, and then Big Laugh would have headliners on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Right, like Duncan Trussell or Chris Stefano, somebody like that. So being able to work like very closely with those people in the beginning played a huge role. I mean, huge, you know. Just the fact that those guys know who I am makes difference. You know what I mean? Like, there's been times that I've got Secret Show not because I did Kill Tony, but because Red Band's like, hey, haven't seen you in a while. Come do Secret Show. You know, come hang out. So, and then also getting to watch the way that that's grown. Kill Tony from the time that I visited here and it was at Antone's to it being at Vulcan, and then now it's at Mothership, and it's just this whole other beast. I mean, when it went to Mothership, that show really blew up. It really blew up. So being able to like know where they came from and watch the progression and understand kind of some of the steps that went into that, that's all super applicable too. You know, that's knowledge that I can then take and apply to Dress to Kill, Stony Baloney. Right now, I might not have the name that these guys had, or be able to get the name that these guys have had on their episodes, but just what goes into the production of it, right? How to take an idea and bring it into fruition. You know what I mean? That was super beneficial.
There's a comic that I hope you will seek him out. Well, you've already mentioned his show, Jeremiah Watkins. Like, you channel a lot of Jeremiah Watkins, like his story of like building something from the ground up, and now, you know, it is stand up on the spot, and his many webcasts that he's had. And one of my favorite things about Jeremiah Watkins is I reached out to him when this podcast was just starting out. His first Moontower, or maybe first or second Moontower, and he and I sat down and I interviewed him, and I've interviewed him every single year since. So it's like
that's really cool.
Going through that journey of him, like going from, you know, he's a supporting bandmate on Goddamn. That too, but yeah, the bandmate on Kill Tony. But also the bandmate on the Goddamn Comedy Jam
with Josh Adam Myers.
Yep. And then, you know, doing the Scissor Brothers, and then that Adam Ray, Dr. Phil, was born on Jeremiah Wonders.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So Jeremiah has gotten, been in these unique positions along the way, and now, you know, the blow up of Stand Up on the Spot, the podcast that he does with Chelsea Lynn. It's like being at the right place at the right time with that work ethic. It's cool when you watch it happen. And
that's half the battle. That is half the battle is staying persistent.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be people, unfortunately, who give up, who leave Austin
Yeah.
or stop doing stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
right? And like half the battle is outlasting those people. And that's something that Jeremiah clearly did, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't all gravy in the beginning. It took
Yeah.
him years to build stand-up on the spot to what it is now, to where
Yeah.
he's doing Just for Laughs and Moontower
Yes,
and Netflix is a joke and, it's probably a regular show at the Comedy Store as well, correct?
Yep,
So
yep. Yeah.
he's definitely a motivation for this as well, for the things we're trying to do with Dress to Kill and Stony Baloney. Like watching the way that he took that show and grew it, and how that show and his career got to kind of like trade trajectories and kind of have the same trajectory. You know, they become hand in hand with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's not limited to that, right? The same way that Tony is not limited to Kill Tony. It's like you can put them on a regular stand-up show, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? Same Brian Moses, Roast Battle, same thing. So yeah, those three shows, Roast Battle, Goddamn Comedy Jam, Stand Up on the Spot, those are definitely huge influences for what we're trying to do.
I even forgot Roast Battle. He used to be part of the Wave.
Yeah, he used to be part of the
crazy.
Wave, him and Jamar.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And I remember watching that before I was ever a stand-up comedian on Comedy Central, and now I'm, on the green room with Jeremiah or with Jamar. You know what I mean? Jamar co-owns a taco truck over here on the east side of town called El Baracho Tacos, and they used to sponsor an open mic that I hosted last summer for a couple months, and Jamar would come there every week and jump on at the end and do like 10 to 20. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it was like he's paying, because he's the owner of the taco truck, co-owner of the taco truck. They're the ones paying me to put on this open mic, and now he's here on the mic. And I used to watch you on TV, man. Like, this is so surreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it just becomes like the way that everything becomes second nature, and to where like all of that kind of starts to demystify, to where it's just like, no, we're coworkers.
Yeah.
And you don't really think anything of it.
Right.
But other people will be like, what the fuck? You know Tony Hinchcliffe? I'm like, yeah, I know Tony. Yeah, what? Not a big deal. Yeah, that's really a trip. That's one of the funnest parts of doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's close out with a couple of 3 rapid fire questions.
Sure.
One is, what is your favorite thing about doing comedy?
My favorite thing about doing comedy, making people laugh. I mean, I love to laugh. I love making people laugh. Just the lifestyle that we get to live. It's very like, it's not a normal life.
Yeah.
I get to travel so much. I get to stay out every night and get to meet all sorts of cool people and just be around each other, talking shit and making each other laugh constantly. I mean, it's just, nobody's luckier than us. No other friend group is like that. You know what I mean? But we're just like that around each other all the time. It's just so second nature. And then, like I said, you go back home to Virginia and you're like, and your buddies are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, fuck. Okay. All right. Yeah. Just the lifestyle of it all. It's I feel very lucky to live this life, especially, whenever you're showing up to do Denver Comedy Works or Zanies or one of these like, very highly romanticized comedy clubs.
Yeah.
Connor and I are doing we're doing Dress to Kill at the Punchline in Houston on Wednesday night. One of the local news stations in Houston wants us to come on the news Wednesday morning and do an interview.
Oh my God.
So like just stuff like that. That's like, that would have never happened to me before. Oh, this is so neat. What a cool life I get to live.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Least favorite part?
Least favorite part, being broke, trying to balance, because I'm like in a spot right now where I'm like, I feel like I'm right on the cusp of being able to pay all my bills with stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm also like right on the cusp of like, I need to get a job. So my fear is like I'll get a 9-to-5 job and then, I have to go submit for time off so I can go to fucking, Chicago or whatever. Like, I kind of hate the purgatory that I'm in with comedy right now as far as like money goes. Donnell Rollins, Ashley Larry from Chappelle's Show, he said one time, like, if you're going to be a stand-up comedian, you better get used to being broke. So that's just something I've been kind of trying to get used to.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to eat healthy and not just ramen noodles. Yeah, that's my least favorite part. I mean, it is a little bit of a hustle and a grind trying to get booked all the time and stuff like that. But a lot of the things that I think that some people, and I'm still young at this, but a lot of things that some people like, you know, Shane or Theo might dislike, all the travel, meeting all the people, all of, you know, those are the things that I still enjoy, right? So I'm loving that part of it right now. I'm hating just all the little behind the scenes bullshit that has to go into it. But that's, you know, that's
with any job.
It's a job.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we all do this because we're like, I don't want to work a normal job. And it's like, great, but you're still going to work a job. This is a job. It's not a normal one. So like, go with the flow, roll with the punches. Yeah.
All right. And your final question.
Okay.
One word to describe your future.
One word to describe my future. I want to say bright, but that feels too easy. That feels too easy. Bohemian.
Ooh, I like that one. I'm not sure I've heard that one before.
When I started off with this, my mentors and my goals were like, I want to get to Joe Rogan or Tom Segura level. I want to own a media empire and be able to, you know, live comfortably in a $5 million house, right? But as time has gone on, I've started to realize, like, you can make a living the same as a 9 to 5, you know, normal human being would make being on the road doing stand-up. And my goals went from, now don't get me wrong, they're still lofty, shoot for the moon, right? But I'm perfectly fine being at a level like Doug Stanhope or Ari Shaffir. And I feel like they live a more bohemian comedy lifestyle where like they're well known, they got money, they're living comfortably. They're just wild individuals though. You know, Ari's like, I'm going to throw my phone in a drawer and go to Malaysia for 6 months, right? So like, yeah, I want to be able to live like that a little bit. Same with Doug. It's like, you know, he hardly leaves Bisbee. Yeah. He owns the town. He's got his own club there, and people come to him. You know, when he did the day drinking show at Mothership and filmed his special, like, that's not all people from Texas that sold out those shows. Those are people coming from all over the country just to see Doug Stanhope. Now, him and Ari aren't the biggest names. You know, they're not Kevin Hart, right? When you hear their names, you're not like, oh, I fucking.
I mean, but if you know anything about comedy, they're huge names.
They're huge names, but I like the lifestyles that they kind of get to live, right? They don't have all the money and acclaim as say a Joe Rogan or a Tom Segura, but they still get to go pop in at the stand or the Comedy Store or the Mothership whenever they want. Like they're living a comfortable life financially, right? Like Ari could take his girlfriend on a trip to London or something. You know what I mean? Like those are things I want to be able to do with comedy.
Ari is at the center of one of my most magical comedy memories. I went to the Comedy Store 2017, I think it was. And I didn't know what going to a Comedy Store show, the main room,
what that entailed.
Like. So I thinking, you know, it's just like going to Cap City, and it's comic after comic after comic, and I'm one of those. It's like I'm staying through the end. So I get to the end, and it's Stephen Brody Stevens, who's like, our legend, and
Rest in
he's, you know. Of course, I'm realizing that there's like 4 people left in the main room because it's 1:00. But I'm like, I paid for my ticket. I'm staying to the end.
Yeah, I'm getting my money's worth. Yeah.
And he's being Stephen Brody Stevens. And in the back, I hear him. He's talking to somebody in the back, and it's Ari. And Ari's just, you know, giving him shit, but in like this really like sweet and simple way. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Ari Shaffir. And I was like, oh my God, this is like truly a magical moment, you know. Because Ari has this like reputation for being like a brutal, just like in your face, but just like kind of brutal,
right? Yeah.
And he
has no problem being critical with somebody.
But he's being like critical but sweet with Stevens, and Stephen Brody Stevens is just going crazy, and I'm just like, what a beautiful moment that I got to witness.
That's neat. Yeah. A little bit of inside baseball.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to turn this about me, but it's
no, you're fine. No, you're fine. I want to hear about you too. It feels weird talking about just myself for an hour. Trust me. I'm like, gosh, I feel like a narcissist.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham.
Thank you so much,
Presents
Valerie.
Scott Wharton.
This was a
Scott,
lot of fun.
Yeah, Scott, tell us where we can find you and promote your projects. All of those projects.
Yeah, so this is not _ Scott at Instagram. My link tree is on there that you can get to my YouTube, my Instagram, or my YouTube and my Facebook from there. It also links to Dress to Kill, Stony Baloney. When will this be out?
This is going to come out first weekend of March.
First weekend of March. So, I can't think of the dates. But we're going to be at, we'll be doing a monthly show at Roscoe's, Dress to Kill.
Nice.
We'll be hopefully doing a monthly at Cap City, continuing that, Dress to Kill. A monthly at Houston Punchline, Dress to Kill. Last Saturday of the month, Gabe and I do Stony Baloney at the Green Room up north. And then I think March 27th, we're going to do Damage Cases. Connor and I's new show, just a regular showcase, just so we don't have to wear suits and stuff, essentially. We'll be doing that in Dallas at, I forget the name of the venue, Rufus Chop Shop or something like that. That'll be March 27th. So, yeah, just follow. I post all the links, all the posters, all the flyers and stuff there. So, yeah, just follow me on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Scott got to be the comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Scott Wharton. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Valerie.
Oh, I got like a...
You're a really good host.